assessed value is going to begin to grow. The economy is getting better. That's good. So I want to give a big kudo for him in the public involvement. Just a couple of quick things before I end. I attended the California League of Bond Oversight Committee up in Sacramento last week. A two-day meeting. The primary one was Friday. We did have a meeting Thursday of just the board of directors, and for a variety of reasons, this district has a tremendous microscope on it. And with Google alerts that say bond oversight committees meetings and the articles that appear in the local media, you have a lot of attention to what we're doing and scrutiny. And I never realized how much people around the state are looking as to how our committee interfaces with the board. And that I was kind of taken aback by it, frankly. A couple of things, legislative things that were mentioned, and I did speak with briefly with Assembly Member Buchanan was one of the guest speakers, and Treasurer Locke here. Buchanan is carrying a lot of the reform legislation, and she's a former school board member, and I got to tell you, she was super impressive. She knows her stuff and knows performance audits, knows why performance audits should be received at the same time as the bond committee does, and she's very engaged in the process, as well as Treasurer Locke here, who was the keynote speaker. And finally, we had, and it just shows you how media, and I'll be at the end of one other thing, is that what this bond oversight process has gotten the media attention. And one primary reason, probably among others, other than the controversy that we're all dealing with in this district, is the capital appreciation bonds. And those were discovered by Will Carlos from the Voice of San Diego, most people think, but not really. There was a blogger in Michigan who told Will Carlos about the bad deal in Poway. But who gave the bad debt to Poway? It's one of our board of directors, Alicia Minion, who works for the SEC, who gave the data to the blogger in Michigan, who then gave it to Will Carlos. So that's the kind of people that is on the California Bond League board. And it's also, I found out that Lori Ranieri, who's also one of our board of directors, did the consulting audit work for the bound anticipation notes on behalf of the San Diego County Office of Education. And what I'm getting at is not to be a super big name dropper, but there are people out on this board that really do understand the bond oversight committee process and feel pretty passionate about it. How this committee, this California Bond League, is going to proceed in the future is they're going to take more of a role in training and advice rather than, I would call, super advocacism on behalf. They're to answer questions and to train bond committee members and board members. That's one of the things many board members around the state, I think, do understand the role of bond oversight committees. They're going to be trained. Finally, at our bond oversight committee meeting, we talked about deferred maintenance, preventative maintenance. And for all the people in the audience who pay taxes, we're telling, let's spend the money wisely, as I can't emphasize enough. Most, if not all of our committee members say, don't be penny wise and pound foolish. Don't spend millions and millions of dollars on these new facilities. Find a way. It's not sexy. Like I said at the bond, there's not a labor union for building maintenance, but it needs a labor union. It needs somebody to be there for them, set aside that money and keep those buildings preventative maintenance, deferred maintenance, and routine maintenance. It's a critical thing to keep these assets. And Tom Calhoun, it's a major initiative of him, and I encourage you as you go through the budget process that you be mindful of keeping those buildings maintained. Believe me, the students notice. And one final thing, I heard a figure, but it ranges. It was something like almost up to 20%. There's been a statistical relationship between student achievement and the quality, the physical quality of the schools the students are residing in. And that's why it's so important to keep those buildings maintained, so they've got the kind of buildings that they can feel comfortable about with the bond money. So thank you for your time. I know it took a little longer than I wanted to, but that's it. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we're going to move to the public communication portion of our meeting. This is the point on the agenda where members of the public may address the board on any matter not on the agenda and have 3 minutes each to do so. The board president or the board has the prerogative, if there is extra speakers, to change some of the dynamics of those. We're going to try to keep to it as much as possible, depending on how time allows tonight. The Board of Trustees, and this is the main point for speakers during oral communication, cannot legally take action on matters not posted on the public agenda, but will refer the matter to the superintendent's office for review and report. And from my perspective as chair or as president, for those of you that are at our last board meeting, I need to publicly apologize because as the board chair, I did let things get out of control last time. And I want to reiterate the classroom rule that we set forth back in January when we began. If it's not something you wouldn't say in a classroom in front of a classroom of students, we ought to rethink how we say it here. It's okay in private to have a spirited discussion with the person you disagree with, but we need to, at these meetings, adhere to the principle of attacking the policy, not the person. Attacking the policy, not the person. We may disagree with the policy, and that's okay. That's part of the spirited debate. But we don't attack people because of that policy disagreement. We will have spirited debate, there's no question about that. When we get passionate, we get personal sometimes. And so I want us to try as best as possible to adhere to that classroom rule. Many of you may remember Mrs. Chapman from years ago, who sat on this board with me until she was in her 90s. Well, she happened to be my second grade teacher. And as my second grade teacher, she didn't mind slapping my hand quite a bit, even as a board member, when I was eventually on the board with her. But I do remember very vividly as a kid going through my, I think, third divorce with my parents when I was in second grade and happened to be in her classroom. I got busted for throwing rocks across L Street at Cook Elementary School underneath cars. I wasn't trying to hit the cars, I was trying to throw the rocks underneath the cars. Of course, she came out and caught me, and instead of chastising me in front of everybody, she brought me to the room, brought me to the principal, and sat down and explained to me, in the only way Mrs. Chapman could, all the reasons why I was a pretty idiotic kid for doing that. Now my point is this, that we can't have policy disagreements, there's no question. But when we begin to personalize it, it brings us down to a level where we don't really accomplish what we need to accomplish. So tonight I want to ask your indulgence to please stick to the policy issues. We can move forward to this as we have public communication. So with that, Dr. Brandt.
Fran Brinkman, you're up. Vanessa Gammas, you're on deck.
And by the way, most of you know we have been here since 3:30, so at about 8 o'clock we will need to take some type of break because a 6-hour stretch with nothing is a little bit difficult. So I just want to forewarn you. Ms. Brinkman.
It's there.
Put the camera on your podium there.
Can we have the order that we requested, please?
No, they won't do that.
Ms. Brinkman?
Board members, I've been asked to present a statement written by Mr. Carlos Gonzalez, Assistant Chief District Attorney Investigator for the County of San Diego. District Board, thank you for allowing my correspondence to be read as I am out of town. I write to express my disappointment with the district administrators, particularly Dr. Ed Brand and William McLaughlin. My daughter Ravanna and her friend Vanessa Gambez were asked to coach the cheerleaders at Montgomery High School by teacher Sesha Haynes last June. The girls felt honored as Sesha Haynes was their own former cheer coach at Otay Ranch High before they graduated in 2007. This past January, when Ravanna was to be paid, she was told that she first needed to be cleared and was given a packet by a cheer advisor, Maria Estrada. I then advised Ravanna to speak to someone at the district level. She spoke with Dr. Brand, who promised that both she and Vanessa would be fully paid. Dr. Brand then abandoned his promise to the interference of Montgomery High School principal, Mr. Rodrigo, and a Mr. McLaughlin, who indicated that they did not have the funds to pay both girls and were canceling the cheer program. To date, the girls have not been paid. What concerns me is Dr. Brand and Mr. McLaughlin are aware that Ms. Estrada, with the support and in the presence of her boss, the principal of Montgomery High, Mr. Rodrigo, offered to pay Ravenna in cash so that number one, Ravenna would not have to pay taxes. 2, the cheer program was canceled so Ravenna would not have to hand in the illegally required human resource compliance packet to continue. 3, Ravenna would also have to split the stipend with Vanessa. Still further, the district should be concerned about the violation of federal labor laws when they have 2 employees who have provided a service for 7 months without prior clearance, compensation, or even the recognition that both were hired for equal pay over the course of a year's contract, which the district has now intentionally breached. And where are the cheer fundraising dollars that remain unaccounted for to date? What is beyond comprehension is that the Montgomery High cheerleaders and their parents were told that their coaches suddenly quit on them, all but destroying the reputations of these young girls. This is how you take care of your dedicated young alumni? What steps will the board, and particularly Dr. Brand, take to mitigate these damages perpetuated by these ongoing lies? Shame on you for allowing this issue to get to this point, specifically you, Dr. Brand. You are charged with the responsibility of overseeing that issues like these are resolved before they reach this magnitude. Finally, our school district certainly does not need any further embarrassments, the glaring eye of the public scrutiny, or bad press. Make this right and reinstate these coaches, as well as compensate them for what is rightfully and legally owed to them for the full year under which they were hired. After all, don't we teach our kids to always do what is right? Thank you.
No comment.
Vanessa Gammons, and then Ravenna. You're on that.
Yes.
I am Vanessa Gomez, one of the 2 cheer coaches. Ravenna Gonzalez and I were asked to coach Montgomery High cheerleaders by former coach Sasha Haynes. Ms. Haynes was also our former coach at Otay Ranch. When meeting with Sasha, she stated to us if any conflicts were to rise, the principal and the school would have our backs. They take care of their own, or so we thought. Kicking off the summer in June, Ravenna and I held a second tryout due to lack of attendance at the first one, held by Sasha Haynes. Once we had our full squad of 35 girls, we began summer practices 4 days a week. We started fundraising by having 2 successful car washes. Also in the summer, we had a full-day cheer camp at Sweetwater High School. Once school started, the girls performed at both freshman orientation and open house. Football season took off and we were having 4 practices a week, with JV and varsity Friday night football games. Throughout the school year, the girls performed routines at the school, assemblies, and halftime at football games as well. School staff and parents praised us on how awesome the girls looked and how entertaining the performances was. Ravenna and I were such proud coaches. Our understanding was we were to get paid twice in the year, once at the end of December and the other at the end of June. When December came, Maria Estrada informed us that the district changed the pay date to the end of January. During the last week before we were to get paid, Estrada only asked Ravenna to fill out a clearance packet to pick up her stipend. Never was I asked any information about myself for the school or district. I thought this was completely odd that they wouldn't need any information from me, seeing as I was coaching underage students. At this point in time, I spoke with the principal, Tom Rodrigo. When I spoke with him, he had informed me that this was the first he had heard of the situation at hand. Mr. Rodrigo then told me he just got off the phone with Dr. Brand 10 minutes before our conversation. He explained to me that Dr. Brand told him that Ravenna and I would get paid in full for the time we have worked. I quote Mr. Rodrigo, "We will figure something out with payroll." I was extremely disappointed when Dr. Brand handed us off to McLaughlin. That following Monday, did not return my phone call. McLaughlin was no help in the unfortunate situation. He was dodging questions and concerns we had. Ravenna and I were told by Rodrigo that Montgomery was no longer having a second semester cheer program. This was completely devastating to us. How could they crush the girls like that? Not only were they taking this away from them, but from us as well. We were promised a full year, June 2012 to June 2013. We put our hearts and sweat into this program. And how were we thanked by not paying us the rightfully earned money and being treated as young, naive women who just will go away? Little did we know and just find out from the cheerleaders that Sasha Haynes was coaching them for 3 weeks in April to perform at an assembly in May. She is now going to hold tryouts for the next school year. So all of a sudden there's a second semester? Why weren't we informed? What do the girls think happened to us? We were downright lied to. So many questions with no answers from Estrada, Rodrigo, McLaughlin, or Brandt. We are both alumni of the Sweetwater District. We were ecstatic about coaching. Please do the right thing and pay us. And let's continue to coach the girls we miss dearly. Thank you.
My name
and I were both approached in June of 2012 by former Montgomery High cheer coach Sasha Haynes, who also coached us at Otay Ranch. We met at Islands prior to coaching, where Sasha explained that we would be hired for the year. For our services, we were each to be paid $26.95 in December and again in June. I was to be paid through a stipend, and Vanessa was to be paid through fundraisers and ASB funds. During this Islands meeting, we were told that we had to fill out paperwork at some point. In the meantime, I was to report to cheer advisor Maria Estrada. Before practices began, Estrada provided me with gym keys and gate keys as well as a remote to the back gate. We began practices that summer, working 4 days a week, as well as holding another set of tryouts for both JV and varsity squads. We put in countless hours of practice, games, and fundraisers, as well as school assemblies, performances, and events. We took our job seriously, we were dedicated, consistent, and always on time. I recall only one incident in 7 months of hard work where we were late to one practice, but I had advised the captains to run the practice until we arrived. Although we were not required to attend football games, we were also present at all but 3 games and gave notice to the cheer advisor to arrange for the football coaches to accompany the girls. Attending games was the specific job of the cheer advisor Maria Estrada, who never once attended any games, fundraisers, practices, or after-school events. In fact, Ms. Estrada was notorious for not returning our emails or calls as well as the girls' inquiries. She relied on us for everything and even ignored our multiple requests for fundraising, and to this day we have no accounting of those efforts. Come December, I asked Estrada about payment. She responded that it was now continued to January 31st. 1 week prior to January 31st, Estrada informed me she had a packet for only me to fill out in order to be paid. When I picked up the packet, I asked if there was a need to provide a packet to Vanessa. She replied no. I was to split my stipend with Vanessa because there were no fundraising dollars. This was a clearance packet which stated on its cover that absolutely no coaching prior to all the following requirements being met. This packet includes courses, tests, and fees in excess of over $300. At that point, my mother contacted Dr. Brand, and I received a call from Estrada stating that McLaughlin had just canceled the cheer program. She then offered to take the stipend and the tax hit and pay me in cash for Vanessa and I to split. She told me she was doing so in front of Montgomery Principal Mr. Rodrigo. I then had a conversation with Dr. Brand where he praised us for our hard work, wanted us to continue, and assured me that we would both be paid. McLaughlin interfered with all of that, which is why I'm here today. The cheer program was never cut, and Sasha Haynes replaced us by telling the girls that we up and quit without notice. At this point, it's not only about the money and contracts broken, but also about our reputations with the cheerleaders and their parents. I'm here to ask that Sasha Haynes be removed, that we be allowed to continue and receive the full benefit of our year's contract, as well as a full explanation of the truth provided to the cheerleaders and their parents. Thanks.
Who's up?
Inspector, you're up. This is Cheers Roundup.
Board members, my name is Dr. Ida Spector. I'm the mother of Montgomery High cheer coach Ravenna Gonzalez, whom you just heard from. I want to begin by acknowledging Bertha Lopez for being the only board member to respond to my emails. Thank you, Ms. Lopez. Next, I would like to address you, Mr. Cartmill. Despite my request, you refused to address my complaint against both Brand's and McLaughlin's handling of issues surrounding my daughter and another Montgomery High cheer coach. Instead, in an email from your secretary, Deanne, I was informed that you felt it more appropriate for McLaughlin to handle his own complaint against himself, and were handing it back to him to do just that. In the past, I have had the open cooperation of the board. So as a constituent who has consistently voted for you every time your name has been on the ballot, Mr. Cartmill, I find it perplexing, disappointing, and plain hurtful that you would ignore this grievance and elect to throw it back at McLaughlin for his own investigation of himself. Last January, in an effort to resolve any conflict, I contacted Dr. Brand's office. Immediately thereafter, I received a call from a Mr. McLaughlin who questioned if anyone would be able to identify these girls as coaches on campus. McLaughlin went on to say that there was no stipend for cheer coaches and that the district only paid for one cheer advisor per year. McLaughlin's tone was rude and accusative from the onset. Post this conversation, I spoke with Dr. Brand, who was unaware of any McLaughlin but wanted to resolve the issue. You then admitted, Dr. Brand, that the district was wholly to blame for these coaches having fallen through the cracks. You also apologized for Mrs. Strada's attempt to pay off my daughter in cash, though you applauded Mrs. Strada's intentions. You said, "We must not resort to what is most expedient, but rather we must do the right thing." Knowing the coaches were district alumni, you further indicated, "We take care of our own," and promised to fully compensate both coaches. You also wanted them to continue the outstanding job they have thus far done. You even commented, "I want first shot at hiring Ravanna when she receives her teaching credential."
Oh, my.
Since then, Dr. Brand, you have been unavailable and have allowed McLaughlin, who contrary to what you told me is quite well known to you, to take control. In so doing, the supposed compliance officer, McLaughlin, has been anything but compliant and has used every dirty tactic to try to deceive, accuse, discredit, demean, and malign these coaches in an effort to cheat them out of their due and destroy their jobs. He lied to the coaches about the cheer program being cut. He lied when he made sure to throw the coaches under the bus by telling the cheerleaders and their parents that their coaches had up and quit. He has used and abused the power of his office to misquote laws and outright mislead me by suggesting even further that I take my complaint about him and Brand to Student Services employees Mercedes Lopez and Ramon Leyba. You both well know that McLaughlin reports only to you, Dr. Brand. In closing, I would ask the board to investigate Ed Brand in collusion with McLaughlin, Principal Rodrigo, Cheer Advisor Estrada, and Coach Sessa Haynes in their willing and intentional participation in impeding these coaches from being paid and destroying their lives in the process. Would you stand by and let this happen to your daughters?
Dr. Brand, you and Mr. McLaughlin just keep being the gift that continues to give.
Ladies and gentlemen, please.
I'm going to take my couple minutes this evening for public communication and talk about L Street. L Street, which is on the front page of the Union Tribune today, it's my understanding that the Union Tribune gave Dr. Brand long enough time to right this ship, and yet the ship continues to sink. And so I would like to tell those members of the public that do not purchase the UT to please stop by on your way home and get one and read to see what your board at the time, Mr. Cussa, Mr. Cartmill, Dr. Brand, Bruce Hessen, and Diane Russo, to name a few, what they have done. We bought the land and then we gave the land away. We don't hold the paper on the land, but yet we're paying the interest on it. Now, Mr. McCann has left, but I'm sure he'll listen to this. He always listens to what I have to say, right? And so, Mr. McCann told me after the BOC joint meeting, he reminded me that he was with the city of Chula Vista at the time, and that they advised you, Dr. Brand,